Hi, my name is John Lau, and I'm Chief of Police at the Titusville Police Department. Today I'm sharing an update on the officer-involved shooting that occurred on February 7th, 2025 in front of 490 South Robbins Avenue. I want to start by thanking the members of our community and citizens for their support, trust, and understanding during this time, while also notating that over the course of these past 3 or 4 months, a small group of vocal people have continually and verbally attacked me, our officers, members of our agency, and our city council over this incident to push their own crooked agenda. These attacks have taken place at council meetings, on social media, and anywhere else an audience could be found.
When they grabbed him, whatever was on him dropped. What he did was turn around, grabbed it, and he ain't aim it at nobody. Then
he dropped it on the ground and picked it up.
Well, he didn't intentionally drop it. How the officers grabbed
I
him.
was saying, but he dropped it,
yep.
And he still
dropped
picked
it.
it up.
He turned around, tried to pick it up and stuff, and tried to run. The officers swarmed and grabbed him, and he dropped his vape. And when he turned around to go grab it, they yelled out "gun" and they started shooting the man.
Some of these individuals do not even reside in the city of Titusville, and they are only here to influence their own personal and political agendas. These groups have no firsthand knowledge of the case to include facts or actual evidence. It has all been speculation, as they have been screaming from the mountaintops that our officers did not act appropriately. These groups should be ashamed of their actions and the manner in which they are conducting themselves. As Chief of Police, and with support from our state attorney's office, I chose not to release any of the video evidence. The purpose was to allow the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the Brevard County State Attorney to fully investigate the incident, which includes collecting and reviewing all evidence before a determination could be made. This was done to protect the integrity of this investigation. In an abundance of transparency from the beginning, the decision was made to have an independent agency investigate this matter with full awareness that the result of the independent investigation would then be submitted to the state attorney's office for review. This investigation was extremely complex and took time to complete. With outside pressure to release the video prematurely, as the Chief of Police, I refused this external pressure, as the evidence and the integrity of this case were my only priority. On June 10th, 2025, the state attorney finalized their review of this incident. I am now in the position to share with everybody what actually took place that night, to include the prior criminal activity attached to this residence that initially brought our officers to 490 Robbins Avenue. The only person responsible for this critical incident is the person that broke the law that night and put our officers and citizens in harm's way. The video you are going to see, while extremely graphic, captures the dying declaration of Tri-Marea Charles after he dropped his firearm, fought with our officer, and rearmed himself with that firearm. After rearming himself, Tri-Marea was then shot by 2 of our officers. Charles' statement showed that he knew what he did was wrong, putting his own life in peril.
Give me your other hand.
I'm dead.
Subject just roasted me with a firearm.
I'm dead.
Get me other officers here.
I'm going down. I fucked up my life. It's over with.
Roll medical. Roll medical.
For over a month prior to this officer-involved shooting, this specific address was the location of repeated calls for service, with 9 of them involving gun violence to include shots fired calls. The reckless use of a firearm in a residential area has the potential to cause anyone in the vicinity great bodily harm. For instance, on January 29th, 2025, there was a report of shots being fired coming from the area of 490 South Robbins Avenue. A video from a neighboring business captured audio of these shots being fired in broad daylight. Further, in weeks leading up to the officer-involved shooting, on February 7th, 2025, we received numerous emergency 911 calls from concerned citizens who were worried about their safety and the safety of others.
911, what is your emergency?
I don't know. I heard gunshots.
Okay, what's your address, man?
I'm calling anonymously. Robbins and Pine.
Robbins and Pine, okay. How many shots did you hear?
Okay. 2.
What's your address, your emergency?
On the corner of Pine and Robbins.
All right, what's going on there on the corner of Pine and Robbins?
They're popping off shots.
Titusville Police Department Communications, this is Kendra.
Hi, Kendra. I hear some bullets flying out front.
What do you hear?
Bullets flying out front like a machine gun.
You hear bullets flying with a machine gun. Where are you? What's the area?
Palmetto Street. There was a fight out there earlier. They were arguing and fighting, but then they disappeared. Now I just heard guns firing off. One gun sounds like a machine gun. That's not the first time I heard it either. It sounds like the same damn gun all the time. You know, there's kids around here. We can't be killing kids.
I understand. Yes, ma'am.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
Pine and Park. I'm pretty sure it was shots fired.
Okay, and how many did you hear?
At least 7.
As you heard, these were several 911 emergency calls of shots fired. One of the most concerning 911 calls was this one where the citizen was begging for our help and said, "I don't want to die today."
911, what's the address?
Hello. It's on the corner of Robbins and Pine. There's different guns shooting. I'm on the floor because I don't want to get hit by friendly fire. It's on the orange, ma'am.
You heard you could hear shots fired?
I heard like 3 or 4 different shots from different guns, ma'am. And I think that there was a fight earlier, so I don't know where it's stemming from, but I don't want to get shot through the window or nothing, so I'm laying low.
Okay.
I just heard it, and it sounds like they're shooting at each other. Ma'am?
Are you near any windows?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
They're not shooting at me. I think they're shooting at each other, but I don't want to die today.
I understand.
I'm on the floor.
Stay away from the windows, okay? And you'll be okay.
Okay.
And
it's on Pine Street and Robbins.
Yes, we've got officers on the way there. Okay?
Yeah.
Due to the repeated calls for service and the rise in brazen gun violence, our patrol and investigative teams work together to address this issue involving 490 South Robbins Avenue. This address was the nucleus of all the calls where the reports of shots being fired. The following heat map shows an increase in our calls for service for the area in and around 490 South Robbins Avenue, where most of them were incidents of gun violence. This is over a 4-month period prior to our shooting, with the red area indicating a higher frequency of calls for service. As a result of these calls for service and investigative efforts, our Special Investigations section was able to buy illegal drugs from 490 South Robbins Avenue and ultimately developed probable cause for a search warrant, which was served on February 5th, 2025, just 2 days before our officer-involved shooting. The main focus of this search warrant was for illegal drugs, but also to seize illegal guns in an attempt to stop any additional acts involving gun violence that would continue to place our citizens in harm's way. Despite the residence being just over 700 square feet, more than 15 individuals were in and around the house and were detained during the warrant service. Several of the detainees were juveniles. While the search warrant did produce some narcotics and a single handgun, investigators would later learn from witnesses and neighbors that just prior to the search warrant being served, a bucket of guns were removed from the residence and brought to a house around the corner on Palmetto Street. The criminal activity and guns being fired continued after the serving of this warrant. On February 7th, 2025, approximately 11 minutes before our officer-involved shooting, the Titusville Police Department received yet another complaint regarding shots being fired in the area of South Robbins Avenue. Officers had also developed information that there was going to be an open house party at that residence. With this information, the on-duty patrol sergeant met with his squad to develop a plan that was designed to prevent further acts of gun violence impacting our community. As a result, several uniformed patrol officers responded to the address where they established a perimeter around this house. As the perimeter was established, Officer 1 announced his presence and requested the homeowner to come outside so that he was able to explain the purpose of the police presence at this residence.
Titusville Police, Titusville Police. Hey, how you doing, ma'am? Titusville Police Department. We got our supervisor on scene. You mind stepping out of the house? Yeah.
Upon Officer 1's request, 2 occupants exited the house. Suddenly, a third subject, Tri-Marea Charles, ran through the front door and in doing so, tripped over the homeowner's walker, falling to the ground. During his fall, a handgun fell from Charles's waistband onto the walkway, directly in front of Officer 1. Officer 1 immediately yelled in a very loud and clear voice, "He has a gun, he has a gun," to alert the officers on scene. Charles continued his efforts to flee by swinging a closed fist at Officer 1 and then pushing Officer 1 in the chest. Tri-Marea changed his direction, turning back towards his firearm that he had dropped, picking up the firearm and continued to flee on foot. Charles was able to retrieve the gun with his left hand and ran in a northeastern direction directly towards the location of Officer 2 and his marked patrol vehicle. At the same time, Officer 2 was running towards Officer 1 to assist in what he now knew to be an armed assailant. Charles changed the direction he was running to a more eastern direction, and while doing so, quickly turned his body towards Officer 1 while changing the gun from his left hand to his right hand. As the series of events unfolded, both Officer 1 and Officer 2 discharged their weapon towards Charles as he was an armed threat. Officers continued to fire at Charles until he fell to the ground. While lying on the ground, Charles gave the dying declaration that we previously heard. Officers immediately transitioned into life-saving measures, but Charles ultimately died from his wounds. Agents from FDLE and the Brevard County Sheriff's Office crime scene immediately responded to the scene as the independent agencies investigating the shooting. They collected all evidence to include documentation of the crime scene, interviewing witnesses, and all parties involved. Tri-Marea Charles was a 4-time convicted felon in the state of Florida, which prohibited him from legally possessing firearms. FDLE's investigation determined that Charles's firearm had a depressed trigger, indicating the trigger of that firearm had been pulled. Charles's firearm, a Glock Model 21 SF 45 caliber handgun, had an extended high-capacity magazine capable of holding 30 rounds of ammunition. A standard magazine for the same model firearm would normally hold 13 rounds of ammunition. This firearm was sent to the FDLE crime lab for further testing. FDLE discovered that this firearm was illegally modified with what is known as a Glock switch. A Glock switch converts a semi-automatic handgun into a fully automatic machine gun. It is important to know that just possessing a handgun with this illegal modification is a federal crime that carries a 10-year penalty of incarceration. This is what a Glock switch can do.
It sounds like a machine gun. That's not the first time I heard it either. It sounds like the same damn gun all the time. You know, there's kids around here. We can't be killing kids.
It was also determined by FDLE that this firearm had been used in 5 separate violent crimes in the city of Fort Lauderdale, to include an attempted murder and a robbery. The criminal offenses Tri-Marea Charles committed on February 7th, 2025 were aggravated assault on a police officer, battery on a law enforcement officer, use of a firearm in commission of a felony, possession of an illegally modified firearm, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, possession of cocaine, resisting arrest with violence, and violation of probation. As you can see, video evidence shows 1. Tri-Marea Charles exits the house towards Officer 1 armed with a firearm. Tri-Marea had every opportunity to unarm himself before exiting the house. 2. When Tri-Marea tripped at the doorway, causing his handgun to fall to the ground, he had every opportunity to flee on foot, unarmed. 3. Tri-Marea Charles then chose to physically attack our police officer. 4. Tri-Marea Charles then chose to rearm himself by picking up his firearm that he had dropped. And 5. The duration of the shooting lasted less than 5 seconds. This is just how quickly this incident unfolded.
He's got a gun! He's got a gun! He's got it!
Witness statements verified that Charles ran through the front door of the house, tripped and fell to the ground, causing the firearm to fall out, then rearmed himself with that firearm. FDLE completed a comprehensive report detailing their entire investigation and findings, submitting this report to the Brevard County State Attorney's Office in the 18th Judicial Circuit, as required by Florida law. After their review, the Brevard State Attorney determined the actions of the officers involved were justified, meeting the legal standard for use of deadly force.
Shooting me going on, so they're going to stay on high alert. They're going to be protected. Yeah. So they see a gun dropping and somebody reaching for the fucking gun. What you think they're going to do?
Since this incident, our agency has not received calls relating to shots being fired in and around 490 South Robbins Avenue. In closing, it is tragic anytime there is loss of life. It doesn't really matter if it's justified or not. It is still tragic. Our officers consistently put their lives on the line to protect the lives of citizens. And while I am so proud of the professional way they handled themselves during this extremely violent encounter, I am deeply saddened that they were forced to take action to protect themselves and our community. Thank you.
Hey, this is Jerry with On Point Wildlife Removal. If you think you might have critters in your attic like squirrels, bats, rats, or raccoons, give us a call today. We'll come out, we'll take a look, we'll give you a free quote to get them out, to seal up your home, and clean up whatever mess they left behind. We're locally owned and operated, and we're fully licensed and insured.